إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Indeed, all praise and thanks are for Allah. We praise and thank Him, we seek His help and we ask His forgiveness. We take refuge in Allah from the evil of ourselves and from our sinful deeds. Whoever Allah guides, no one can mislead, and whoever He leaves to stray, no one can guide. And I bear witness that there is no one worthy of worship except Allah. He is one, having no partners. And I bear witness that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is His servant and His messenger. Peace and blessings of Allah be upon him and upon his family and his companions. Amma ba'd, to proceed. Now, I planned to continue, inshallah, with our study of how to tackle shaitan. Inshallah, this is going to be a long study, inshallah. But Sheikh Mahmoud, he did ask me to say some things, or he suggested that I say a few things about this period, this season, you might say, this Christmas after all tomorrow. Now, I think we can combine the two, inshallah. And so those of you who already know the title of today's topic, you'll see it's Truth, Traditions, Santa, and Satan. Okay? And some of you will notice that Santa is actually an anagram of Satan. Same letters, yeah? Whatever that means. Okay. Now, so we start with truth. Now, last time, those of you who were here or heard the previous bayans, you'll remember that we were looking at the footsteps, or some of the footsteps of shaitan, based on this teaching in the Quran. We're told, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ولا تتبعوا خطوات الشيطان. This is mentioned a number of times in the Quran, and do not follow the footsteps of shaitan. In other words, we might say, don't do as he did. His footsteps, the scholars say, his deeds. And we looked at some of his deeds. And we must avoid these things. And one of the things we looked at was this verse in Surah Al-Baqarah, وَإِذْ قُلْنَا لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ اسْجُدُوا لِآدَمَ فَسَجَدُوا إِلَّا إِبْلِيسَ أَبَى وَاسْتَكْبَرَ وَكَانَ مِنَ الْكَافِرِينَ. And behold, when we said to the angels, prostrate unto Adam, alayhi salam, so they prostrated. Not so Iblis. He refused, he was arrogant, and he became one of the unbelievers. He became one of the kafirin. Now, we looked at this in some detail previously, but you see, even in that, there's something to do with truth. Now, you'll see in a minute what I mean. I mean, it doesn't say truth explicitly, but it's implied, you see, because the word kafir, he became one of the kafirin, so he was a kafir. Now, nowadays, a lot of people think kafir means something like unbeliever or disbeliever, but actually the original meaning is much wider than that, much more comprehensive, you see, because the word kafir is related to the verb kafara. And kafara literally means to cover up, or to cover. He covered. You see? Now keep this in mind, that it's something to do with covering, or concealing, or denying. And one of the things that shaitan covered up and denied, and this is part of the meaning of kafir, is, and kufr, of course, is he covered up or denied the truth. So in some ways, that is one of the root meanings of kafir. It's not just we tend to think of it as unbeliever or disbeliever. Sometimes people think it's someone who's not Muslim, but actually it doesn't mean that. Really, in its original meaning and in the Quranic meaning, there's much wider meaning of covering up or denying truth or reality, we can say, inshallah. So there's an indication he became one of those who deny the truth. We also looked at the fact that he refused to prostrate to Adam alayhi salam, and we looked at the reasons that he gave, and we looked at this area of kibr, or arrogance. You see, he was arrogant, and we had this definition, or this description the Prophet ﷺ gave, you see, of arrogance, and it's in a hadith which starts, لا يدخل الجنة من كان في قلبه مثقال ذرة من كبر. That whoever has even like a seed's weight of arrogance in his heart will not enter Jannah, will not enter paradise. Yes. Very serious. That's why we've spent some time on this. But the Prophet ﷺ, in that hadith, he went on to describe or define what kibr was. Yes? And he said that kibr is rejecting the truth. He said, al-kibaru batarul haq. Yes? Rejecting the truth and ghamtun nas. So, al-kibaru batarul haqqi wa ghamtun nas. He said that kibr, arrogance, is rejecting the truth or refusing to accept the truth. And looking down on people, despising people, yes, thinking of people as inferior. Now we looked at that last time as well, that second part, in terms of racism and other differences, people considering themselves to be superior based on all sorts of differences. But today we want to look at this truth bit, you see, because it's rejecting the truth. Yeah. Now, why would we want to reject the truth, you might ask? It's a strange thing to do if you think about it. Why would we want to not accept the truth or not acknowledge the truth, or as in the word kufr, deny the truth? Why would we want to do this? Well, there's many reasons, actually, there's many reasons. And inshallah in a future Jumu'ah we'll have a look at this at some point, because there are many reasons. But one of the reasons, and this is the one I want to focus on today, is to do with a loyalty to traditions, to customs, to culture. This whole area. Yes. People, and all of us really, if we're not careful, we feel this loyalty to what we have seen our parents or our grandparents, yes, or even further back, doing and following. Yes, we have loyalty to the culture that we exist in, and the customs that we've grown up with. And think about Christmas, you see. Let's bring Christmas into this, Santa. Now, if we take Santa just as a symbol for what Christmas now, because actually it's very sad in some ways that Christmas, in the minds of a lot of people, yes, well, not just in the minds, in the practice and the behavior, it's more to do with Santa than it is to do with Isa alayhi salam. I mean, how many people talk about, the birthday or the birth of Isa alayhi salam when Christmas comes along? There's virtually nothing to do in terms of people's practices, because people are following certain traditions, they're following certain customs in a big way, really in a big way. There are every year certain people, and whether they're Christians and sometimes even Muslims, it's sad to say, will be following some of these customs and traditions without thinking. Things like having a Christmas tree, yes, crackers, turkey roast. And I think it's very sad that our halal butchers, they're saying things like, order your halal turkey here. I saw that sign. No, it may be halal in terms of having done the slaughter, but really, why would we want to be eating turkey on Christmas Day? For what reason? Just following the customs of those around us. You see, it just shows the power of all this. Okay? So things like, and as I said, so Christmas trees, crackers, turkey, gatherings, and sometimes excessive eating, drinking. It's all part of it. Now, I'm not here to criticize this, by the way. I'm just here to look at the phenomenon, what's going on. Because we might ask, especially as, you see, over the years, I've heard from Christians and from non-Muslims, I heard them saying, I really don't like Christmas. People say this. They say, even this year and last year, I've heard people saying, really don't like it, don't like Christmas. Because they don't like some of the obligations, like finding a present for every member of the family, Santa Claus, standing in for Santa. Yes, but not just immediate family, the relatives. Yes, and it's a lot of hassle. Some people find this it's hassle, and they don't like it, and they don't like some of the other obligations they feel, but they still do it. This is the thing. You might ask, why do people do it if they don't like it? And if you think, even at a governmental level, even at a national level, you see even with this COVID, there's some allowances, you see, being made because Christmas is coming up. They're not making their decisions until after Christmas. Why? So that people can have their Christmas activities, their festival, despite the fact that there is this virus, yes, which could potentially harm. It just shows, I'm trying to highlight the importance that people give to these customs. But you might ask, why? And it's not, as I say, I'm not here to criticize that. We do it in our community, not just with Christmas, we do it with other things. I remember many, many years ago, when I was getting married actually, so 27 years ago, over 27 years ago, there was some preparations for getting married, and one of the aunties, we call them aunties, like friends of my parents, she wanted me to do something. I can't remember what it was, or I was being expected to do something, and I've forgotten what that act was, but I didn't want to do it, I didn't like it, yeah? It was some sort of cultural thing. And I didn't want to do it, but she said, you have to do it, she said, because this is part of our traditions. Now, I was much younger then, and I dutifully went ahead and did it. As I say, I can't remember what it was, but I didn't like it. Now, but then afterwards, and maybe years afterwards, I thought, why? What's the logic? Why do we have to follow traditions? Why? Where does it say that we have to follow traditions, or that we have to follow the customs of our parents or grandparents, or that we have to follow the culture? Where does it say this? What happens if we don't follow them? Well, some people won't like them, but why? Why don't they like them? If we think about it logically, there's no real reason, is there? People treat these traditions and these customs almost like some sort of fard, some sort of obligatory action, some wajib. She said, we have to do this. Like it's wajib, it's obligatory. Why do we have to? What happens if we don't? Yeah? Think about it, you see? And this extends to all sorts of areas, You see, again, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that we have to ignore traditions or reject our culture, reject our upbringing and so on. I'm not saying that at all. There's nothing wrong with following traditions and customs and cultural practices, yes? And it can add nothing wrong unless it goes against our Islamic teachings, because we are primarily Muslims, are we not? Yes? So it's okay to have, say, we all have our preferences in terms of food and in terms of the way we do things, the way we do certain things at weddings, for instance, yes? Or even at funerals. There are all sorts of situations where we do certain things in a certain way, and different communities do it in slightly different ways. That's okay, inshallah. There's diversity. As I was saying last time, diversity is not a problem. But it becomes a problem if it conflicts with our Islamic values or our teachings or what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent down. And then, so this is very important, we've got to be willing to override those customs. Yes, for the sake of truth. for the sake of obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know, if there's something, and there are things, I mean, I'll give you one example. I mentioned funerals. One of the things that still happens in our community is that after someone dies, yes, there is this provision that the relatives of the deceased, they provide for large numbers of people to come to their home and sometimes stay, not just stay for hours, sometimes stay overnight. Yes, provide food for them. Now these are the people who are grieving. They've just lost someone beloved to them. And yet they're being expected. Why? Because of cultural reasons. This is not part of the Sunnah. And in fact, some of those aspects actually go against the teachings of the Prophet ﷺ. But people feel they have to do it. You've got to do it. That's one example, you see. And people really react. It's funny, people have this such loyalty to customs and traditions that if you say anything which goes against it, people really react. I remember years ago, I was at a masjid where I was talking about it was coming up to Ramadan, and I said, this thing about that in our community, in many sectors of our community, you know, like there's always more food prepared at Ramadan, and sometimes some of us, the sisters, you know, like our mothers or our wives or our daughters, are spending so much time just preparing food. And I made the suggestion, you know, look, the women would be better off, inshallah, yes, or the men would get the reward for not insisting on feasts and so on, and just having something simple and allowing them to spend that time in prayer and Quran study and so on, other thing. I said this at the masjid, and one of the brothers, he got so angry. He got really angry. He said, no, this is what we do. You know, this is what we do in our family or in our community. Well, okay, it's what you do. That doesn't mean it's right. Now, we've got to be willing, we've got to be committed to truth, really. We've got to be committed to truth, we've got to be invested in truth, more than our customs and our traditions and our culture, you see. I'm just going to check on the time because I can't actually see that clock. 12:35. Another 5 minutes, inshallah. So, you see, and this actually goes further. And some of those examples I'm giving, they're not so serious, yes, like the food thing or so. Yes, there's a balance to be had, I guess. But there are some areas where it becomes very serious, you see. Yes. And if you look at it in terms of religious faith, for instance, now here's a thought. Think about this, that in the world, most people, probably the vast majority of people, simply, initially, follow the religion of their parents. Do they not? Yeah? So if you're born into a Muslim family, it's likely that initially you're going to be following Islam. If you're born into a Hindu family, yes, you're going to be following Hinduism, or a Christian family, Christianity. And then if you're brought up by atheists or agnostics, people who don't believe in God, or atheists not believing in God, then it's quite possible that some of that will impact you. So to start with, most of us follow the religion of our parents. Now, if we imagine, it wouldn't be fair, would it? Because we don't choose what family we're born into. But how would it be fair that if we're born into a Muslim family and we just follow the ways of our parents, that we enter Jannah, but if we're born into a Hindu family and we follow the ways of our idol-worshipping parents, we go to the fire? How is that fair? Both parties are just following the ways of their parents. You following this? You see? Now there's a problem. You see, it's not enough to just be following the ways of our parents, because some of us then will be following, inshallah, will be following the truth, and some of us won't be. But all we'll be doing is following the ways of our parents, or following the ways of our community, or the ways of the country we live in. Now that wouldn't be fair. So what we need to do is, again, we must have investment in truth. Now, if we have this investment, if we're actually really, we give truth a high level of importance, then it's quite possible that we will reject, yes, the teachings, let's say, or the culture of our parents. You know, say, for instance, someone who's brought up in a Hindu family might well say, hang on, how does it make sense to have multiple gods or to worship, I mean, in certain forms of Hinduism, yeah? I mean, some of them say that they worship one God, but they have all these intermediaries. But even that, someone might think, well, how does it make sense to have intermediaries? Why do we have to have intermediaries? Or demigods or whatever? Or say, a Christian might think, hang on, how does it actually make sense? God, you know, being Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. How does that make sense? They'll start questioning. And they may, inshallah, arrive at the truth. And we've seen this. We see this, you see. Alhamdulillah, really, alhamdulillah, in the world, I don't know what the statistics are now, but there was a time when the greatest number of conversions were to Islam. Yes, in terms of converting into a religion. Nowadays, maybe there's a high number of people leaving religion completely, or supposedly completely, you know, becoming atheists or agnostics. I don't know the statistics. But we've got to be committed to truth. Okay, let's end, or towards the end, there are severe warnings, and we'll bring shaitan into this again, you see. There are severe warnings in the Quran about following tradition, actually. Severe warnings at following tradition rather than what Allah has revealed. So for instance, Surah Luqman, we have this verse, وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمُ اتَّبِعُوا مَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ قَالُوا بَلْ نَتَّبِعُ مَا وَجَدْنَا عَلَيْهِ آبَاءَنَا أَوَلَوْ كَانَ الشَّيْطَانُ يَدْعُوهُمْ إِلَىٰ عَذَابِ السَّعِيرِ. Very, very powerful verse, that when it is said to them, follow what Allah has sent down. So follow revelation, yeah? When it is said to them, follow what Allah has sent down, they say, no, we will follow, yes, or rather we will follow what we found our fathers on, our forefathers. So following tradition. Yes. And then it goes on, what? Even if it was shaitan calling them to the penalty or the punishment of the blazing fire, the blazing flame. So you see, are we going to do that? If there are things in our habits or our customs or our traditions which go against revelation, go against what Allah has sent down, are we still going to follow our traditions because we have to follow them for some odd reason? Or are we going to be able to change and submit? And it's not necessarily that easy, you see, because we build up habits and customs. And I end on this today, inshallah, that, you know, to give an example, for instance, many of us are used, in the community, we're used to praying sunnah prayers or nafil prayers straight after Fard. Now the Prophet ﷺ, he made it very clear that for the men, it's better to pray the obligatory prayers in the masjid, for the men, but it's better to pray, even for the men, sunnah and nafil prayers at home. This is a clear teaching. You can look up, though, I won't go to it now. And it's very interesting because I've mentioned this in other masjids in the past. I've said that really it's better to just, if you can. Now, of course, there are situations you can't, like for instance now, many of you will be going back to work, say after Jumu'ah. So you will need, if you're going to pray the sunnah prayers, you'll need to pray it here. Won't be time, yes, to wait until you get home. Yes, but it's very interesting because some people in my local masjid, I noticed when I made this, and I gave the hadith as well, some people were able to leave after the Fard, after the Jumu'ah. Some people weren't. Now they may have had their reasons, but you know, with time, I noticed that even the people who they started praying their sunnah at home, they still reverted back to their previous habits. Now this is not a question of sin or haram or, we're not talking, but you know, the maximizing our benefits, inshallah. See, it's not so easy, but inshallah we can do it. We can override, We can actually, for instance, to talk about Christmas, we can actually not indulge in the practices of the community, the Christmas celebrating community. We don't have to make a fuss about it, and we don't have to be rude. If someone, there are some practical differences. If someone says Merry Christmas, what are you supposed to say? Some people say it's haram to say it back. This is in some ways not really understanding the situation. It's more complex, you see, because you don't want to offend someone either. They're just saying it out of goodwill. So you have to find a way. You can say, I hope you have a great day yourself, or you hope you have a peaceful day, a beneficial day. We don't have to say Merry Christmas back, or we don't have to send Christmas cards, and we certainly don't have to do it in our own Muslim families. You see, this is the saddest thing, in some ways, that we somehow feel compelled to do it in our own homes, where no one's inviting us to it. Yes. So anyway, but this isn't about Christmas. It's much more general. To be able to submit to the truth, you see, or to follow what Allah has revealed, rather than the traditions that we're accustomed to. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه إنه غفور رحيم. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم. Our Lord, accept us from us for you, the all-hearing, the all-knowing. وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. And turn to us in mercy, for you are the acceptor of repentance, the most merciful. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. Our Lord, grant us good in this world and good in the hereafter, and save us from the punishment of the fire. ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. Our Lord, we have wronged ourselves, and do not forgive us and have mercy on us. Will indeed be amongst the losers. The other day, there was a woman who ran after me as I was walking to our local masjid. And what it was she knew I was one of the imams there, one of the Jumuah imams, and she just asked, she was really requesting that her father, his son called Abdul Noor, he's very ill with COVID. I think they removed the ventilator. So she was just asking for our du'as. So I said I would make du'a for, not just for her father, but for anyone from our community who are ill. So Allah, please grant full shifa, full cure and recovery to any from among us who may be ill, whether it's with COVID or with anything else. Grant us full shifa, O Allah. And Allah, those that you take from among us, those of us whose time is up, Allah, forgive us and be merciful to us and grant us the highest Jannah. والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون سلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.